Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And the new Mary Poppins is out.
That's
Mary
right.
Poppins Returns. It's only been 54 years since the first one. They brought back Mary Poppins, Disney. Brand new songs, brand new Mary Poppins. Julie Andrews is a bit old these days. The new Mary Poppins is played by Emily Blunt, who, frankly, you can't imagine anyone better cast. I mean, she's perfectly suited for it. And I think she's great.
It's very interesting in comparison to Julie Andrews, actually, because the thing is, you can't imagine anybody better cast than Emily Blunt now. She's lovely. And yet, of course, you've seen her play everything else. Whereas actually, with Julie Andrews, it's like Mary Poppins and Maria von Trapp, which are not that different, are really pretty much all she could do.
Yeah,
on film, anyway.
You do feel the limit to Julie Andrews, but I mean, we went to the cinema to see the new Mary Poppins, and then we came back here to watch the old one, and yeah, they are kind of both perfectly cast. I mean, Julie Andrews as Mary Poppins is pretty perfect.
Yes,
you know, there's a reason that it's
practically perfect in every way.
Practically perfect in every way, and Emily Blunt, there's a kind of central difference, I suppose, that Emily Blunt is not the singer that Julie Andrews is, though she's far from a bad singer, and she's given songs that she can sing.
But I missed that. There's something kind of thrilling about having a great voice in a film. And actually, I thought one of the problems with Mary Poppins Returns is that it doesn't have, like, none of the people are great singers. No, they're all adequate.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I don't think you feel it. I don't think you feel it in the sense of going, oh, if only this was better. I think it's still perfectly enjoyable on its own terms.
No, but there are moments when Julie Andrews sings and she's got that beautiful soprano, clear soprano, and actually there's something just thrilling about that voice.
Well, there's the moment in the first film where she competes with the mirror version of herself, and she sings higher and higher and higher, and then calls herself a show off. There's a reason that Emily Blunt has not been given a similar thing in this film. Nonetheless, like I say, I think she's given songs that she can sing, and so is everybody, and the songs are good, and they sing them very, very nicely. But then the kind of second half to that equation is Julie Andrews is not the actress that Emily Blunt is. Emily Blunt brings something more to the character. I think actually there's more in the writing of the character as well. I mean, when we went back and watched the old one, I was surprised at how basic some of the characterization is, and how kind of the film is almost like it's a collection of bits somehow. It doesn't quite cohere the original, and we'll get onto it maybe. In this film, there's a much more kind of coherent kind of characterization. There are things of... So the basic idea of the new one is Michael and Jane, the kids from the first film, have grown up. It's set about 20 years later. Michael has been married, his wife passed away, he's got a couple of kids of his own. Jane is around the house all the time. And they live in the same house that they lived in the first film. It's been passed down, but obviously it's quite a grand house, and so that you don't hate them, they've engineered it so that they don't make very much money, and Michael took out a loan. The loan is now coming under threat of repossession of the house because he can't pay it back. So the question in the film is, how are we going to make ends meet? How are we going to save the house, and so on? Mary Poppins comes back, and there's an interesting thing going on of, like, she hasn't aged a bit, sort of. So she, in the first film, she was just a magical nanny, and now she seems to be some sort of guardian demon,
demon?
Or angel, if you like, just like an unaging sort of mystical. I bet if we asked Matt Denny, who we had on for the Hereditary podcast, he would have some interesting things to say about, like, the kind of what mythological thing you could draw out of the fact she doesn't age. But there are things in Emily Blunt's performance where, and the direction privileges it as well, where shots will linger on her face that express a kind of internal sadness to her somehow, and you don't really quite know what it's about. So she shares, this version of Mary Poppins shares the kind of aloofness that the old one had, of kind of going like, yes, I know I'm facilitating all of this fun, but I'm above it.
it's not just that. I mean, the last lines of the original Mary Poppins was, what would become of me if I loved all the children I took care of, and then had to let them go. So actually, I think kind of, there is something. Well, what I found that Emily Blunt brought was, on the one hand, a kind of an underlying sauciness. Yeah, sorry, an underlying sadness, but also an underlying sauciness. Yeah, kind of that's really brought out in some of the music hall numbers that she's given, right?
Yeah.
She's a woman who finds joy in sex, really, where you never got that sense with Julie Andrews, and actually, kind of that both of those things are not quite there. Really, there's a desire for them that she expresses, and a delight in them that she expresses, but actually you never see her obtaining it, so to speak.
And that's kind of interesting. I kind of never thought of it as what she wants. I thought of it as kind of obligation. So the idea was, one of the things that this film does is cleave incredibly closely to the structure of the first film.
Yeah.
And one of the kind of defining aspects of the first film is you come to realise by the end that this was never about teaching the kids to do anything. I mean, the kids don't really change or have anything to learn. They kind of they start off basically having fun and kind of annoying their dad.
Yeah.
And by the end of the film, they're still having fun. It's just that now that they are also able to go into drawings and stuff because Mary Poppins.
Well, she opens up their fantasy life,
right?
Which the father has been repressing.
And yeah, the what you realise by the end of the first film is it's all about the dad. The dad is the one who needs to learn to lighten up, essentially. And in this film, the same sort of thing happens. So you have Michael and Jane, when Mary Poppins comes back, saying all that stuff that happened when we were kids. I mean, we just imagined it, right? And by the end of the film, they realise, no, it was true, and they kind of rediscover their joy and that sort of thing. So it becomes, it's the story of she's there for the dad, not for the kids.
Who's the actor who plays the dad in the original?
In the original, David Tomlinson.
David Tomlinson. One of the things that surprised me watching the films back to back like that is actually how much better David Tomlinson is in that part than Ben Whishaw.
Yeah.
Which surprised me because I adore Ben Whishaw.
Ben Whishaw's absolutely lovely and a fantastic actor. He's given different things to do.
Yes, and he doesn't. To me, he doesn't do them well.
No, probably not. He's basically a bit of a walking frown. I mean, because he doesn't kind of deny that. The thing about David Tomlinson's dad was the kids shouldn't be having fun. They should be learning to get on with the world, and the world's a harsh place, and they need to learn that, and they need to invest in the bank and that sort of thing. And Ben Wishaw's dad is nothing like that. Ben Wishaw's dad is just covered in woe that he's not going to be able to keep his house. So it's a very different kind of tenor that he's asked to do.
Yeah, but he does the Ben Whishaw thing of just looking wounded and sad. Yeah. And actually, I think, the father should have been stressed and loving and whatever. But, this kind of, this wounded sadness that Ben Whishaw always does is a bit out of sorts with the film, really. I mean, I didn't sit well with me anyway.
I think it's not that imaginative, but I think not that imaginative is kind of the way to sum up the new film. I think like I say, it is so heavily sort of cleaving to what the original film did in all sorts of ways. But I think the dad is less interesting because he has less to change about himself. I mean, the thing in the original film was it was a significant change that the dad was incredibly sort of down the line and stiff upper lip, good British, we must raise the children this way and all that sort of thing, and he changes to let's go fly a kite. In this, what does the dad learn really? The dad kind of relearns that that he has access to that joy in his life, but the thing about saving the house and the shares and stuff, the way that's resolved completely comes from out of nowhere. It's total Deus Ex Machina stuff, and I really actually, it's so lazy the way that was fixed.
Well,
where you had the bank chairman still played by Dick Van Dyke, who at 93 years old is still tap dancing on tables. It's amazing.
He's wonderful.
But he comes back basically from out of nowhere, just happens to be at the right time, and not only does he say, oh, it doesn't matter that you haven't got the signatures on the share certificate, he also says, oh, by the way, that 2p that I made you invest 54 years ago, that's made loads of money now, so you can keep the house and stuff as well. Yeah. It just completely comes out of nowhere, and it doesn't derive from anything, and it's like the problems are fixed.
Well, it comes from the original film.
it doesn't. It only logically. I mean, it doesn't come from anything insofar as like what does it mean for the characters or anything? Nothing. It's not actually. It doesn't bring about a change or anything like that. That matters.
To me, the big failure of the Ben Whishaw character, not necessarily as acted, though I do wish he'd stop being so dour and sensitive all the time, but in the way that it's written, is that the logical development in the father would have been to rediscover or recommit to being an artist. Right, because so kind of what Mary Poppins gave the children originally was this access to imagination, right? That was the main thing. And then you see that his thing was originally to be an artist, and then somehow life made him slip back into being a minor bank clerk at the bank. Right, so you would have expected that part of this learning process with his children and Mary Poppins would have been to rediscover his own gift for art and to recommit to it. And in fact, that doesn't happen. He kind of recommits to his family, but actually he'd already been pretty committed to his family. It's just been, he just had all these worries, right? So actually he doesn't go through any transformation, except that he gets to keep the house. And I think that's a major problem with the film.
Yeah, I think in a roundabout way, that's more or less what I was saying too.
Yes, no, I'm developing.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, we agree on the same lines. It's just the film, like I say, it attempts to adhere to what the original film was doing very strongly, which is a problem in itself because it just means there's no imagination. On the other hand, it even fails to do some of that.
Yes. But let's focus on some of the great bits, actually, because so one of the things that we said was that the film follows the structure of the original almost identically. In fact, it seems so lazy that way, right? Like, you have an animated moment, or in this one they go into the porcelain,
right? instead of into the chalk drawing, but it's the same thing.
But it's the same thing, right? Kind of the Meryl Streep
sort of wacky lady. She's Mary Poppins' cousin.
Yeah, is also like the equivalent of the other cousin in the first film.
Yeah, the guy who laughs and hits the ceiling.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's really, really lazy. On the other hand,
and at the end, instead of flying kites, they all just fly balloons.
Yes.
I mean, Jesus.
But I still found the film hugely enjoyable. And there were kind of some things, I suppose, that I just, want to highlight. So, obviously, Emily Blunt is a joy in this part. She's just perfect. I was also surprised by how charming Lin-Manuel Miranda is. Because I was expecting to be really put off by him.
Yes. He basically plays a Dick Van Dyke type.
Yes.
He plays Bert, except he's not Bert. He's Alfred or something, and he's a lamplighter instead of a chimney sweep.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I thought he was a lot. Well, he was extremely charming, which I just somehow didn't expect. I mean, so I can't remember any of his songs, and actually, for me, the songs are a problem in this new version because, I mean, I'm not quite sure yet whether they're just not good songs or whether I haven't heard them enough to be memorable yet. That's always the danger. But actually, sometimes you listen to a song in a movie for the first time and you come out humming it.
Yeah.
And in this one, we came out humming all the songs from the 1964 original, right? And actually, a few days later, the songs I hear in my head are the ones we saw from the original and not the new one.
Absolutely.
So I think the score is a problem. But I thought he was very charming. I thought the Meryl Streep moment was entirely a cliche, but a very lovely one.
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And she was great.
Yeah, and she was great.
Yeah.
So, kind of the film is full of all of these...
It's an improvement on the bit where they have the tea party on the ceiling in the first film.
Yes.
So, like, as kind of pointless diversions go. Yes. It's a much better one.
Yes.
And also, I think it's great to see kind of, quote-unquote, older actors being given kind of things to do still. I mean, okay, so it's no surprise that Meryl Streep kind of continues to be great. But seeing kind of Angela Lansbury and Dick Van Dyke come back...
she was a joy.
Even just for small moments.
Yes.
But kind of, real sort of non-generian stuff.
I mean, when particularly Angela Lansbury appeared, it was like,
Oh, you had a little moment.
I had a little moment. It was like, ooh, Angela.
I knew it was coming, you said.
I didn't know it was coming, and it was like a complete joy. And in fact, it brought back these memories, because the first time I saw the original Mary Poppins was in fact in a reissue where Mary Poppins and Bedknobs and Broomsticks, both directed by the same guy, Robert Stevenson. It was a double bill of those two films, and of course, Angela Lansbury was the star of Bedknobs and Broomsticks, with David Tomlinson, I think. It was just like a joy to see her. I did expect Dick Van Dyke to make an appearance, so I was kind of looking out for when he would appear. Yeah. And of course, I love Dick Van Dyke, and in fact, kind of this very peculiarly British thing about the awfulness of his accent. Who gives a shit when you see the movie, right? Yeah. Like, he's just such a joyful presence, really.
He's lovely, and I think it makes the movie.
Yes.
The original.
Well, I think it's a great part of what makes the movie, for sure. So it was a joy to have him back. And again, as you said, it's amazing to see, like, somebody who's 90 and still dancing like that, really,
It's fantastic.
And you can tell from the shots that actually, there are moments where they're using a stand-in, where he's jumping up the table, but actually the steps he's doing on the table are his own, right? And like, it's quite amazing to see.
I think he climbs on the table himself.
Well, okay.
I wouldn't be surprised. He's full of life. So we watched the original again. I hadn't seen it in a long time, and whenever the title comes up, my mum likes to mention that when I was sort of 16 months old, and then like when I wasn't walking, she could just plonk me down in front of Mary Poppins, in front of the telly, and I would just sit there and watch it. And I was a lazy little so-and-so, so like if I was playing with a toy and then it kind of went out of reach, I wouldn't bother trying to go get it back. I would just go, no, I'm watching the telly. and she could go upstairs and clean and whatever, and knowing that I wouldn't get into any trouble because I was just watching it. And so I would watch this film over and over again. I knew every word of all the songs, which is amazing to me, because when we watched it the other day, I was surprised at how much I'd forgotten.
Oh, well, I was surprised at how much you knew. You were singing every song.
I still know Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I still know Chim Chim Cheree. I still know Let's Go Fly Kite and one or two other bits. But I'd forgotten so much. I'd forgotten really anything that happens in the bank, the whole Rush on the Bank thing. I'd forgotten the tea party in the sky, and it's rather like when I watched the original Jungle Book. A couple of years ago, when the new one came out, I went back to the old one to, again, revisit it. I'd not seen that for years. And I was surprised at how badly it kind of hung together.
No.
The original Jungle Book is a collection of scenes, really. And you remember them. And again, you remember, some of the songs. You remember, Bare Necessities. You remember the bit with the vultures. You remember this, that, and the other. But when you watch it as a whole, you go, there's no plot in this thing. It is just bits that are fun. But it doesn't add up, and I was surprised at how similar Mary Poppins was to that experience, where it's 2 hours and 15 minutes long, and it has so little real plot to speak of. It is just things happening, and so by the end, it feels so light that although I've had kind of a good time watching various bits, the whole kind of rooftop sequence is incredible. I felt kind of bereft. I felt like, oh God, is this it? And actually what it made me feel is when people sort of say, oh God, how can you remake this? How can you reboot it? It's a classic. You go, sometimes these things aren't untouchable.
No, well, no. And I think the original Mary Poppins definitely isn't untouchable, though I think there are some things that are in the original that I wish, the remake would have been more adventurous with. So, for example, I love the mother and making the mother a suffragette and, our daughters will adore us and, all of that bit. I thought, I think Glynis John and, that whole number was just glorious, really. Yeah. I also thought that some of the supporting cast, like Hermione Baddeley, the two maids and Rita Shaw, who's also fabulous in The Pajama Game, Rita Shaw. But I love Hermione Baddeley. She's got that very wicked sense of humor. And actually, I've loved Julie Walters for 40 years, but she's beginning to get on my nerves playing all of these, housekeepers, always so mannered. And it's like she's playing the same role that she played in Paddington, really, in this film. So I thought, that was definitely inferior to the original film. And I thought that, some of the imagination, the Pope, Dick Van Dyke's Penguin number, right?
Yeah.
Kind of, there's a joy in that and an imagination in that, actually. So.
Yeah, what was happening at the time when they made the first film is that was brand new. And actually, Mary Poppins it won 5 Oscars, and one of the Oscars was Best Visual Effects, I think.
Right.
So this was like, kind of live action and hand-drawn animation interacting was, not that common, and it works beautifully in that film. And what this film does, rather than kind of innovating in any other way, it harks back to it. So when they go into the porcelain, they go back into a 2D animated world, which is very beautiful, and it's really nice to be there.
It's very well done.
It's very well done, but it's atavistic rather than kind of forward looking in the same sort of way. It wants the past back.
Yes, I mean, I think the interesting thing about both films, and I have to say this carefully because I mean the first film is visually in many ways very impressive, right? But on the other hand, like none of the shots are, how to put it, visually expressive. So you see the characters within the frame doing extraordinary things with the live action and the animation but actually there's nothing about the shot itself that's expressive, right? And
I think until you get to the rooftop scenes are different. When they walk up that the staircase made of smoke. And the silhouettes against the sky. There are really wonderful visual moments there.
Okay.
But I think that's a bit of a one-off.
Yeah. And I think the same is true of this film, of the remake, right? I was very interested, for example, in seeing the credit of, directed by Rob Marshall and then choreography by Rob Marshall. And then you think, well, I wish he'd have fucking filmed his own choreography with more imagination than he does now, right? Because, the choreography itself, to me, it's good enough. It's not like, wow, but it's good enough. But actually what is not good enough is the way that it's filmed, right? And you got no sense of pattern or shape to kind of the images. It's like, they were just filmed, really. And I found that very disappointing because, I always remember actually I saw this interview with him in which has always stayed with me because he said something about, the key to making musicals work is the moment where characters open their mouths to sing. You've got to get that moment right? Because if you don't get that moment right, it becomes ridiculous. And I think actually he gets those moments right throughout the remake, right? So he's obviously somebody who knows about musicals and who likes musicals and so on. But actually, I just think he's got no visual sense in kind of filming dance, which really surprised me, his being a choreographer.
And his having made, musicals before.
Chicago and so on.
This made me want to... I've never seen Chicago.
I've seen Chicago.
This made me want to see it on the basis of the number in the porcelain world where they kind of go to the theatre and they get Mary Poppins up on stage.
Yes.
And then she kind of turns into basically Catherine Zeta-Jones from Chicago with the hair like that and the kind of kinky boots and what have you. And it turns into a real kind of showstopper sort of, the lighting is stage lighting, all that sort of thing. It's a musical on stage number.
Yes.
And it's great. I think it's one of the best bits of the film.
I think so too.
I loved it. So that had a really strong kind of visual sense to it. But you kind of felt like he's doing what he knows.
Well,
other Rob Marshall films I've seen, Into the Woods particularly.
Yeah, that was a very disappointing film.
Horrible time with.
Yeah. Such a great score and such a disappointment visually. And actually, the thing about Chicago is, again, I love the score of Chicago, but I remember all the dance numbers were cut up. Right. They were edited, boom, 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 right? So, they were edited on rhythm. So it was almost like the rhythm of the editing is what created the dance, which really, annoyed me at the time. So, and did he also do 9? Was 9 his? Yeah, like, that's
not seen it.
That's not a credit to anyone.
Yeah. And he did one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies as well, which is just...
Oh, right, I haven't seen them.
They're all just set to see, it's rubbish.
Yeah, I get them all mixed up. I'm sure I have seen them all.
On Stranger Tides, I think, was the one he did. But yeah, I mean, not that you could remember.
Yeah.
I do think, I said to you after we came out, I think we were sat a little bit too close to the screen.
We saw it on IMAX.
We saw it on the IMAX digital in Birmingham, so the screen was massive, and that's really the way you want to see it, you know. And it should be a spectacle, but I think some of the design visually may have been slightly compromised by the fact we were sat so close that actually you couldn't really get a picture of the whole thing. If we'd been sat a little bit further back, we may have appreciated it more. I'm not saying it's a great film visually still, but I think we slightly compromised it ourselves by doing that.
So for me, all in all, let's be clear. I thought it was a joy to watch. I enjoyed it enormously, and I enjoyed it all. You know, that said, I don't think it's a very good film.
Yeah, I kind of agree. One thing I do think is that it's quite possible, if not likely, that it will become a classic to kids in the way that the original was way back when. I think we've got to reserve judgment on the songs. I think it's true that we don't come out kind of humming the tunes. We can't remember any one of them, but that doesn't mean that they won't become memorable in time.
Yes,
with kids
particularly with kids watching them 40 times.
Exactly. So I'll definitely reserve judgment on that, and I think it has got kind of really enjoyable sequences and sort of moments, but like I say, watching it with sort of adult eyes and noticing all the things where it's just refusing to iterate on what the original film did, refusing to change anything, and just going, we've got to do this exactly so. It's rather like how the trailer for the new Lion King, which people are calling live action, which is very weird because it's CGI, but the trailer for the new Lion King is it's composed of shots which are directly lifted from the 1994 Lion King, but just done in CGI now. And it's bizarre that, like, I mean, remember when, was it 1998 when Gus Van Sant remade Psycho shot for shot? Literally shot for shot. And he was vilified for it. How can you remake Psycho? And now you're remaking Lion King shot for shot, and it's like, it's fantastic, God, we're going to see the Lion King again, as if you couldn't watch the original Lion King. It's very weird. So this film is in that mode, kind of going, you know, we can't possibly change anything because what people want is what they had, sort of thing. Yes. Which is very disappointing.
Well, it's very interesting because it's almost like, let's say, if a film had a blueprint, you know, both Mary Poppins and the original and this one have the same blueprint. So it's executed slightly different, so the numbers are different, or they take place in different places, but actually the blueprint seems identical. Yeah, and it's so it's a very odd experience, really, kind of watching it if you know the original very well, because after a while you are able to predict how it's going to go, what comes next, in a way, you know, or where is this piece going to be with the relative? Is it going to be up in the air or down? And
but like I say, I think kids may attach to it very closely.
Yes,
you know, like it does have moments of visual sort of interest or moments of conceptual interest, like diving into the bath and then you end up in an underwater world.
Yes,
you know, like it's not the most original thing in the world, but it is quite good fun. And go on.
What I love about this film, the colors pop out. It's really lively. It's to me, in a way, what you expect a musical to look like. The reds are red, the blues are blue. Yeah. You know, it's kind of, they're very happy colors, right? And it's a very bright film. And actually, I love the musical that is bright and full of poppy colors, and this was it. Yeah.
Yeah, not tainted by any shadow. It's very flat lighting, it seems, all the way through. Just like get the colours out, sort of thing, which is great. I did think about it in relation to Paddington, partly because of Ben Whishaw and Julie Walters. I mean, Julie Walters being a maid again, and as you say, being totally insufferable. Yeah. But it made me think, kind of, Paddington was a film that Paddington 2 this is a film that I was really not looking forward to on the basis of the first film. Yes. And ended up having an amazingly good time. And I think that in comparison, like I kind of wasn't looking forward to this. I was more just curious to see what it would be like, really, because the idea of a Mary Poppins sequel is kind of so novel. I would say that it has fewer extremes, because I did have lower lows in Paddington 2. Like that first kind of half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it was, when I was really not having a good time in Paddington 2. I didn't experience anything like that in this. On the other hand, there were fewer things that charmed the pants off me. You know, like this doesn't have an equivalent of a Hugh Grant, you know, just stealing every scene sort of thing. It doesn't have those moments.
Yes.
So it's a little bit more flat. You know, the extremes of what I felt were kind of shaved off in this compared to Paddington. So I would say I preferred Paddington on the basis of enjoying the moments that I enjoyed more.
Well, I mean, to me, you know, the Meryl Streep number, you know, the Angela Lansbury appearance, all of those things were things that popped, that they were like, you know, moments that popped with joy for me.
Yeah.
So,
I think Angela Lansbury probably wouldn't pop for the youngsters seeing it. I think you have to know who she is.
yeah, probably.
Yeah, and that's quite a personal moment for you, I think.
Yes, perhaps. Though, you know, she did get given a whole number, and
Well, she didn't sing. Did she sing?
She did sing.
Did she sing? Oh, okay.
Yes, I think she just sings. I think the number then goes into to encompass everyone.
That's right.
But
yes, right.
you know, and I mean,
because everyone else flies off into the sky and she's just sat there.
And everyone who's grown up in Beauty and the Beast, you know, or Bedknobs and Broomsticks, or you know, but particularly, I mean, didn't she play the teapot in?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so it might have more resonance than you think.
Possibly. She's certainly got an incredibly recognisable voice.
Yes.
You know, you recognise her from her voice if you don't recognise her face, which you should anyway, because she's got a very recognisable face too. But you know, she does have a voice that you remember. So yeah, I mean, maybe not, but it's kind of in a way, it's not for me in a way. Like this is a film that is absolutely for a new generation of kids coming
it
to
is,
it.
and I think a new generation will love it.
I think they probably will. Yeah.
Yeah. So. On that basis, I would highly recommend it.
I would reasonably recommend it, but then I would reasonably recommend it in the same way that I would kind of guardedly recommend watching the old one, because, like I say, going back to the old one, you go, God, there's nothing happening in this. This isn't as good as I remember.
I didn't feel that as strongly as you did, actually, that nothing was happening, because I think each of the numbers, as a number, expressed different things. So I think there were, very many things happening, and it was all kind of, very well done and enjoyable. It wasn't great, like, kind of, there's no moments in this comparable to the really great musicals like, An American in Paris. I mean, I went to the museum in Madrid a few weeks ago, and there's just that bit of the ballet in An American in Paris where Gene Kelly, wakes up from his dream or grabs the rose, and, there were a dozen people kind of riveted on this little moment of film, that kind of was on a loop and, shown under the worst conditions possible and so on. There's nothing in the original Mary Poppins that's done, with such flair and such artistry, but, kind of, I found it still very, very enjoyable to watch now, even though it looks kind of old-fashioned and slightly clunky. And I think the new one is likewise, it's not a great film, but actually in many ways it is comparable to the original. Yeah, it's a very efficient film, kind of made with an eye to the audience that will end up pleasing that audience. Yeah,
and it kind of offers something that you won't get in other places, which makes the kind of the flaws pale into comparison.
Yes.
It depends on the background. Like, I mean, it's worth remembering that the original Mary Poppins was nominated for Best Picture.
Yes.
Which, I would say, on the basis of its filmmaking, is surprising. Yeah. But on the basis of everything else it offers is not.
Yes.
See what I mean?
No, I agree. Yes. So, yes. Okay. So shall we wrap it up?
Yeah. So it's half decent.
Yeah,
kids will like it.
You'll enjoy it.
We're eavesdropping at the movies. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube, Facebook and Twitter, and eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye bye.